Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Artificial Intelligence, and to the second in our discussion meetings looking at how we can make a contribution and help shape the national AI strategy that's being developed. And the theme of our second meeting is resilience in the face of change through an emphasis on skills, talent, and R&D. We looked at this issue, or we looked at the wider issue of a national AI strategy back in May, when we were joined with representatives from business, academia, and think tanks, and that has helped us to develop this series of meetings. We have with us, I think, 4 speakers this morning, each of whom are going to give us 5 minutes on their thoughts on this important subject, and then that will leave some time for questions and answers. Just before I hand over to my co-chair, Lord Tim Clement-Jones, who will do a little bit of scene setting, 2 things to say. Firstly, can I thank again publicly the Big Innovation Centre for all their support of the All-Party Parliamentary Group. It's through their efforts and support it makes us one of the most active groups, and certainly the output that we have is helping to shape both the way parliamentarians think about artificial intelligence in all its guises, but also it forms our input into government. So we're grateful to them, and of course therefore to all of you for your input and helping us to produce that or those authoritative reports. The other thing I need to say is that the third of our series of meetings, which was due to be held on Monday, has been postponed until I think October. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's October, but a formal invite will be sent out in the next few days, I believe. That's right, isn't it, Desiree? Yeah, she's nodding, so thank you for that. Right, I will hand over to Tim for a few words. He'll then hand back to me. I'll do a quick bit of housekeeping and then we'll carry on with our first speaker. Tim.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I'm going to be very short because we've got a real challenge over the course of 1 hour. This sort of second pillar of the national AI strategy is massive. I mean, we're not just talking about skills, and we've got a bill going through Parliament on that. The question is, how fit for purpose is that? You know, we've got the whole range of issues relating to whether or not we're fostering the right skills in terms of not just STEM, but also creative skills as well, and how we deliver those skills through whether it's T-levels, through FE or HE, indeed adult education, the upskilling agenda of huge importance. And of course, that then crosses over into digital literacy, and there's going to be a national media literacy strategy coming forward, we hope soon. So you know, this is a pretty broad spectrum just on the skills and education front by itself. And then, of course, we've got the whole research area. We've got the new ARIA bill coming forward, with ARIA being constructed to, in a sense, really try to have a boost for, if you like, real innovation, out of the box thinking, I think is the expression that some ministers have used. And then we've got a new structure, in a sense, for the oversight of research and development as well, through a new office and so on, let alone some of the former structures like UKRI and Innovate UK, which are there as well. So again, I don't know how we're going to manage to cover all this. It's going to be a bit breathless, I suspect, but it's great to have the lineup of speakers we've got today to help us through this particular knotty pillar. Thank you very much. Back to you, Stephen.
Right, we will start with our first speaker, who is Purdy Fraser, who is Chair, National Numeracy, member of governing body, brackets court, I'm not quite sure what that means, and member of the Audit and Risk Committee at the University of Edinburgh. So Purdy, if we could have 5 minutes from you on your thoughts on this important subject.
Thank you very much. I'm really delighted to join the session today. And I'm going to really focus on skills. because that comes into my role at Court, which is the governing body of Edinburgh, and also my role at the National Lottery, where I'm on the board, where I do a lot around skills there, and of course National Numeracy. To start with, I really support the recommendations of the AI roadmap as a brilliant framework to look at the strategy. AI and big data are clearly cross-cutting technologies at the heart of the government's vision for the future. And in terms of people and skills, I was trying to think of it in 7 buckets, some of which touch on things I'm sure that you're talking about in other parts of these, in other sessions, but I'll just run through my 7 quickly. So firstly, it needs to be, for people and skills, this needs to be a long-term, well-funded strategy about building skills across the entire population and investing in research, both core AI and its applications in healthcare or defence or manufacturing. Secondly, we really need to focus on multidisciplinary skills, multidisciplinary thinking across public, private, third sector and academia. I mean, the AI Council is a great example of multidisciplinary thinking. Many of the greatest ideas, as you guys will know better than me, come at the intersection of different fields. But in some sectors, like healthcare, where we've got really advanced global leadership, many practitioners and researchers at all levels have limited understanding of AI, and we need to foster this thinking that they must all come and work together on. So my third point is really comes out of that one, diversity, for reasons not only of bias and fairness, but because of this innovation from multidisciplinary thinking, we need diversity of thought, of geography, of ethnicity, of age, throughout the whole supply chain. The issue has just, for example, been highlighted in the academic world in the Stanford Index, where they published stats last week that only 8% of US PhDs declare themselves to be multiracial, Black or Hispanic. That's 8%. And they also gave a stat on global faculty in 2020, only 16% female. So there's a lot of work to do. This isn't just UK, this is obviously a global issue. My fourth point is about UK-wide. We need to not just have 3 or 4 centres of excellence, but we really need 30 odd, 30, 40, the number, I don't know the right number, but it's certainly 10 times what we've got. Long-term, well-funded centres. AI is a cross-cutting theme that fits into all the sectors, as I was saying earlier, agriculture and healthcare, as much as finance and computer gaming. Fifth, about being open for business. We need to not only attract people, which we do brilliantly, we attract people to come and study here. We have 3 times more people studying at bachelor's level, studying AI than the entire EU, according to the Stanford Index again, and only about 10% less than the EU27 at master's level, but we need to keep them. The US keeps 80% plus of its AI students. A recent study had us keeping less than half. We could also offer things like time-limited tax relief, like they do in the Netherlands for highly skilled workers. We could provide scholarships that treat them more like home students, cut the red tape in research and innovation funding, create a more attractive business environment so they want to stay. Sixth, and I guess this is the biggest point, about the skills pyramid. To fully realize the benefits of AI, you've got to democratize access to it across the whole skill set. Everyone needs to be able to trust it, and everyone needs to be able to understand how it fits into their lives and into their economic activity. So we want to upskill the whole way through. We want to start early with supporting teachers more and supporting parents and carers. There are programs which are ready to go, like the BBC Microbit program, which other countries are taking up and running with. I believe in Canada and Finland and various other countries are running with nationwide schools programs, but it's not something that we've done, as far as I understand, nationwide. There's a pilot Scottish digital curriculum, which would be interesting to see how that works with national certificates in data science. Citizen training, for like they're doing in Finland. They had massive take up at the end of their first year. I think you've discussed this in another session, but that is clearly something where we have some work to do. There could be an online academy for AI or professional development awards. We also need close involvement from employers with educators, because employers are telling us that they don't know what the skill set is that's been coming out. Several surveys recently have employers showing that they don't understand the skills and the qualifications that people are coming out with, and they don't understand, and they haven't communicated what they want to education, whether it's HE or further education or schools. At a workforce level, many people are talking about, could we have a chartered data scientist certification or qualification? The WEF recently estimated that more than half of employees in all industries would need upskilling due to AI. But you don't need a degree in mechanical engineering to drive a car, and you don't need a degree in statistics to do machine learning. You just have to have some training in order to use them. And I think there's a lot of work to be done there. At undergraduate and graduate study level, I think there's an aspiration that every student should have some training in this, whether you're studying history or agriculture or fine art, not just the computer scientists. Everybody should be able to incorporate and understand data science and AI. Just from the specialist supply chain issues, the UK is really well placed to provide leadership in things like AI auditors and AI specialist lawyers. And I think that there's some really exciting leadership points that we can take and make as our bid for some parts of global leadership in AI. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Tim, I'm sure you've got...
Yes, Purdy, that was a really interesting set of points there. I mean, really comprehensive. I mean, one of the frustrations, though, you talked about the interdisciplinary aspects, by which no doubt you mean the kind of mixture of humanities and STEM, the sort of crossover. We've recognized it in things like conversion courses from the humanities across into AI, you know, some of the Turing aspects. But why isn't it more generally recognized that the creative skills are going to be useful in conjunction with a knowledge of machine learning and so on? I mean, there does seem to be a disjunct in government thinking, really.
I mean, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think it seems to be, I think that there's an approach in funding, in government funding, to put things in the buckets, in the Research Council buckets, and I think, you know, part of why GPAI was created was to try to encourage this multidisciplinarity, and it's still in very early stages. I mean, GPAI has only been around for a couple of years, and I think hasn't really delivered quite yet on that. It's absolutely intending to. And I think there is an awareness in government that they need to focus on it, but I don't think that has fed through, and the results have not. We haven't seen those results. But you know, speaking as a university governor, I mean, we are actively talking about it, but we're talking about it, and it hasn't actually happened yet. And I hear that in university forums. So I think we need to get a much stronger push from the centre that this is critical.
Great, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Right, we will go on to our next speaker, which is Dr. Aidan OSullivan, who is Director of Systems and AI Lab at the Bartlett School Environment, I think, Energy and Resources at UCL, UNESCO International Research Centre on AI, and Programme Chair for AI and Climate. Aidan, we look forward to hearing from you at 5 minutes, please.
Thanks very much, Stephen. Hopefully you can see my screen.
We can.
Okay, great. So I prepared a little presentation, but yeah, mainly echoing a lot of what Purdy's already said, but this is my background. So I'm an associate professor at UCL Energy Institute, where I run a course in energy and machine learning, which I'll tell you a bit about more now in a second. But I'm also a Turing Fellow at the Alan Turing Institute, and did my postdoc at MIT in machine learning in transport. So applied artificial intelligence research has been kind of the main thrust of my career. I'm also the UK rep on digitalization to the European Energy Research Alliance, and also the chair for AI and climate at UNESCO International Research Centre on AI. So I'll be echoing a lot of what Purdy said, but from the specific point of view of trying to run a master's program in machine learning for the energy sector. So we launched this MSc program in 2018, and it was specifically designed to tackle the digital skills gap that we saw in the energy sector, which needs to adopt AI to accelerate decarbonization. So the problem was, of course, that it was a very slow sector to do this. So we wanted to create the people with the skills to do this. So this is some of the insights that we've had from running this program over the last 3 years. It's been really popular, really successful, but hopefully there are learnings that people can take from this on how you do these kind of programs which are needed for cross-sector AI adoption. So first thing we did was get industry support. So we immediately went out to talk to companies about what skills they wanted, how did you structure a program, and we've also had engagement with them in the form of guest lectures and things like this, which is really attractive to students. So again, this is kind of touching on one of the challenges of running an interdisciplinary machine learning artificial intelligence MSc. We recruit a very diverse cohort of backgrounds because we need them, because we're interested in getting people from all walks of life who are interested in the energy sector and climate change. These can be people with a background in international policy who've seen the need for data science and machine learning to play a role in the future developments of the sector. We have lots of people coming from undergraduate degrees in engineering, maths, and physics, but also people who don't have that technical background. We also get a lot of people retraining from industry, from management consultants, BAs, Ofgem, people who work in large corporates, all different kind of backgrounds. And our key message is that AI is not just for computer scientists, that we want to make it available to other people who don't have that specific background. Again, as kind of Purdy has said, you don't need to be a computer scientist to develop these tools. You can use them without having that specific background. So having run the course for 3 years, these are the main challenges I found students approaching me with as concerns about why they should do the MSc program or why they might not do it. And one of them is, of course, the mathematical fundamentals. So this is a challenge that we really work very hard to address on the course, but it's something that I would see as a barrier as you look to expand the range of programs of this type. In order to get cross-sector adoption of AI, we need lots of interdisciplinary machine learning programs like this. And one problem that students are always raising is they feel concerned about their lack of mathematical background to take on a course like this. There's also this fear of not being a computer scientist. And again, this is kind of a communication issue of making people aware that AI is not just for computer scientists, that it has a role in every discipline going forward. And you also have this challenge of engagement with industry being very ad hoc. So this is something that we're facing as a new growing young field that we have to establish ourselves time and again with different industrial partners. So these are some of the challenges we've encountered in digital skills. And in terms of research, as an academic, I do a lot of research as well. So one of the things I've noticed that's different about doing AI research is that some of the structures that are more associated with funding traditional research aren't as well suited for some of the peculiarities or specificities of AI research. So one of the unique traits of AI research is this kind of hacker culture, where challenges and competitions like Kaggle or hackathons are really a part of how the field has evolved. And funding for these kind of challenges does not exist under the kind of current framework. So one example of something that we developed in partnership with the French National Grid is the Learning to Run a Power Network Challenge, which was accepted at NeurIPS, the largest AI conference in the world this year. And it essentially opened up power systems problems to the AI community and artificial intelligence to the power systems community. So it allowed you to train an AI agent to run the grid. And what this was essentially doing was a bit like what Purdy was saying. It's, it allows you to use the tools without having to build the roads. So it gives people the option to play with these things, to see what they can do, to get them interested in the subject without the pain of having to construct everything from zero. The final recommendations I have are to, in order to get greater access or cross-sector adoption of AI, you need more interdisciplinary MSc programs like the energy one that we've started, but in construction, in transport, across the whole range of sectors. And creation of a common mathematical foundations of AI video lecture series would be really helpful in removing one of the barriers that students face when considering whether to apply for these programs. And it would also help create a consistency. Students are very reliant on video these days, but there's a whole host of them. So there's a role to be played by the AI Council in creating a specific set of video lectures that are accredited and designed by experts. Again, as kind of Purdy referenced, accreditation would be really key. These are new degrees in a young field, and students are concerned that their qualification won't be recognized. Again, not being pure computer scientists. So the RSS has a great role to play. So I think I'll leave it there, and yeah, happy to take any questions. Thanks, Stephen.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Very interesting. Tim, I'm sure you've got a comment or two.
I do. Aidan, I thought that was really interesting because, this fear factor, where you're trying to get this cross-disciplinary education in place and to get people to take up these kinds of MSCs. I mean, it's a real barrier, isn't it, in so many ways? And really, I mean, the big question is how you get this sort of common mathematical foundation on foot. I mean, in terms of selling the ability of people to do this stuff, I always say if we could train a bunch of peers how to, I see that Lord Holmes is on the call as well. If you can train a bunch of peers how to train a deep neural network, which we were only in the foothills, but we learned an awful lot from that process. If you can train us how to do it, then if you're 25 or 30 or whatever, you stand an even better chance of getting a result. But I just wondered, you mentioned the RSS, but is there a kind of move to get, a greater number of higher education institutions involved in this kind of common mathematical foundation platform?
I think it would be a really great goal or role that the AI Council could play, or the AI strategy could work towards. Again, it does need to be top down because you're bringing together institutions that very much will want to do their own thing, and you do need this kind of leadership of bringing them together to create something that is recognized as the standard or as the leading source of material, because again, there's such a plethora of material out there. Students often don't know which one to go to and end up reviewing the wrong thing. So having one common kind of foundational series would be really helpful in giving people exposure to what they need as the fundamentals. Great,
thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you again, Aidan. Just before I go to our next speaker, which is Filomena Porta, as this is, we're going to try and create a sort of a round table sense of this discussion. If anyone would like to make a contribution, I think the easiest way is just to raise your hand, and then I'll come to you once we've heard from all four of our speakers. So, as I say, let's go to Filomena, who is head of Smart Networks Enzen UK. Is that how it's pronounced?
Yes, good morning. Yes, that's right. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation for today. So I have 20 years R&D innovation background in the public and private sector here in UK, mostly driven by the energy decarbonization agenda. But we know how digitalization underpins the net zero challenge and how it's important to achieve it. So, but what I wanted to touch on today is I just wanted to share a concept of democratization of R&D and innovation. And the reason why this is something that I'm I really care about was because I faced recruitment challenges, and everything that Purdy and Aidan said, I can just relate to it. I faced recruitment challenges when trying to recruit for my data team. Couldn't find skills, so I've undertaken a change program within EDF to upskill colleagues so that they could have the modern skills required for artificial intelligence and digital data. And that's where I realized that R&D and innovation as state of mind, you don't need a department to do it. You can go beyond the paradigm of a corporate R&D, of a startup, of university. You can, and artificial intelligence and data are so conducive for this type of approach, because if we see what's happening in out there, people have meetups. There's just the normal meetups. They have artificial intelligence and machine learning meetups. They work on collaborative online tools, like in the gaming. It's that kind of community. They help each other with this approach. There are new type of universities coming up. I don't know if you came across the TEDi London, where there is project-based learning, and is mostly online. There are self-development tools that are available. So my key message is that we got an opportunity here to break the boundaries of traditional R&D, and the benefit is also that when the macroeconomics shrink and put pressure on investment and R&D investments, this is a way to go around it. And so my key message is I think we should really signpost what are these opportunities to do R&D and innovation beyond the normal schemes, help create reference communities, and signpost self-development tool and share best practices. So it's probably less than 5 minutes, but this is what I wanted to put across to today. Thank you.
Filomena, perfect. Thank you for that. Tim.
Yeah, Filomena, really, really interesting. But if you talk about signposting, I mean, how do we do that? I mean, do we improve our careers advice? Do we need employers to be more proactive? How do we get the message across?
I think that the employers are also looking for signposting, because there are not many people that translate these ideas into practice. So I think that it would be very good to have some kind of working group that looks at what's happening in the grassroots movements of the community, and help permeate these concepts in corporate, in small and medium enterprises, in university, and just trying. I think that a small group of people can do quite a lot, and I think involving young people in this, like the owner, these are the people that are making change. You know, I came across fantastic people in interviews that taught themselves coding without any needs. So trying to identify these champions and help this group of champions, helping each other, the corporate and everyone else.
Do you think that universities are plugged into this enough themselves?
I don't think so. I think that because we don't respect, but I think the university have their own environment and their own mechanism of sharing. And this grassroots that I've seen is outside, is more operational in a sense. So we need to cross-reference the operational side of AI with the R&D side of AI, I think.
Great, thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tim, and thank you again, Filomena. Right, we will move on to our final presentation before we go to sort of the discussion. And that is from Ilana Golbin, who is Director at PwC, Emerging Technologies and Responsible AI Lead, I believe, in the US. Ilana, if we could have 5 minutes from you, please.
Yes, thank you, Stephen. Good morning, everyone. I'm based in the US. This is very early for me, but this is a very, very important topic, so I thought it was worth waking up at 3:30 in the morning.
Well, thank you for that.
I would like to preface this by saying I do live in the United States, so I'm not subject to the UK environment. However, I have, from this side of the ocean, been fondly looking at a lot of the initiatives that the UK government has been supporting over the past several years in the spaces of responsible AI and data privacy, and also now I would think these newer initiatives around research and development and innovation in the AI space. I am a practicing data scientist. I've been a practicing data scientist for over a decade. And as a lead of an artificial intelligence team at PwC and our global responsible AI leader, I do quite a bit of work supporting our clients, primarily in the commercial spaces, to identify AI capabilities that they need in order to expand the AI use cases that they're trying to develop, in order to think about the type of capabilities that they need in order to govern these systems and make sure that they're effectively monitored, and so on and so forth. So what I'm about to say, I think, is really colored by that perspective. I do want to say that to date, a lot of what I have seen occurring in the educational space around AI follows primarily 2 or 3 different trajectories. One being, there needs to be some type of basic education for everyone around data science and AI. I think we can all agree that's incredibly important, and the other presenters have echoed a lot of these sentiments, so I won't delve too deep into those. Part of what that has focused on to date has really been around the usage of low-code or no-code tools, which enables individuals to build AI systems fairly quickly. I'll return back to that point, though, in a moment. I would say the second pathway is really around deep specialization in data science and AI. So thinking PhD level AI scientists, people who are able to go deep into specific technologies. My view is that in practice, the world is a lot more complicated than those two different trajectories. On the data science for everyone pathway, there is a limitation of what you can do with those types of low-code tools. They are oftentimes not going to enable us to build deployable production quality systems. They do help us innovate very quickly, and they do help us expose a wide variety of individuals to the power of AI and the potential of different use cases. So it helps for rapid innovation, but it does not allow us to build with high quality these types of production systems. On the specialist pathway, again, we're talking about very, very, very specialized individuals, which translates to very costly for a lot of organizations and very difficult to come by, as well as a significant lead time for training. And these individuals as well are typically deep specialists in math and statistics, in the mathematics required for deep learning, for machine learning, other types of capabilities, but they often don't have the diversity in the training in order to be able to, again, build flexible production quality systems. So my perspective is that there's a lot more that we need to be targeting in the educational landscape. So part of that is identifying people who can serve as domain experts, who can provide the use case capabilities, identifying what actually needs to be done, the metrics that we need to be looking for, the data that we need to be collecting, and then helping translate different capabilities and use cases in the AI space to something that can be built to our very specialized data science staff. We need engineers, data engineers, machine learning engineers, people who focus on the architecture of systems to make sure that they can sustain quality AI machine learning systems over a long period of time, detecting when they no longer work or when data has changed such that the system itself needs to be adapted. We need to strengthen the social sciences aspect, ethicists, other people who will be interfacing with AI systems to think about the human factor, the human impact. And then we also need individuals who are thinking more strategically about longer term vision. And this is again from a commercial angle, but I think it also, this type of thinking is entrenched earlier on, in grade school and university education. One other aspect I did want to raise, just given some of the points that the other presenters had posed around the hacker culture that data science typically centers around and around the very rapid development process around AI machine learning. Over the last few years, we've become a lot more aware of the data supply chain, where our data comes from, how our data is annotated, who is providing that data, with what frequency it's updated. And I would say that it would benefit all of us to incorporate some of these elements into basic education around AI and machine learning, because to date, a lot of the courses start with a data set and then you build a model off of that data set. And not as much thought goes into the different factors that created that data set, which we now understand can cause a lot of other problems, as well as the creation of that data set itself is oftentimes built off of several existing types of disparities in society. So again, I think that there are, if we broaden our landscape in terms of the type of education capabilities that we're planning on building, we can try and fill these gaps. But I am quite supportive of the initiatives that exist to date. So thank you all for having me.
Thank you very much indeed, Ilana. Very, very interesting. And thank you again for getting up so early. We're grateful, very. Tim, I'm sure you have a comment, and then I don't know if...
Yes, I do. Thank you very much for that, Ilana, because you really unpacked, you know, a wide variety of different skills and qualities that are needed. And I suspect you have exactly the same issue in the States as we do here, which is, and then you mentioned the data supply chain, and this is relevant to that in terms of perceptions and so on, the question of diversity of the AI workforce. I mean, you probably spend some time thinking about that. How do we get to a better place? Because if we're not careful, you know, our data scientists are going to be overly uniform and therefore have overly overly uniform thinking basically in this area, which I think is pretty dangerous when you're when you do need to spot bias and so on.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think, Tim, this is a great question, and you're completely correct. Obviously, in the US, we have massive diversity problems that we're contending with on our own right. And I see this as well in supporting my clients and also hiring for people in my own artificial intelligence team, is that it seems to come from a few different pockets, both socioeconomically, from a, you know, from a racial disparity background, from a racial perspective, and then also from select universities as well. So all of those are particular issues we need to be tackling. My view is that I think basic education across all different sorts of educational degrees would really be necessary. So understanding what AI machine learning is, but more broadly data, and how each industry creates data, how it informs data, how that data might be used to serve some other purpose. So that type of basic training, just like I would say common maths core, is really important for all of us. So certainly pursuing those types of pathways. I would also say having these types of micro degrees or micro accreditations to support different portions of this admittedly very large AI landscape, so that individuals can build the skills, select skills, and then be certified or be another way, you know, shown some type of commemoration for the fact that they've gone through that type of certification. That will help us think of AI not as, right now it's presented so much as this massive thing, and you either have this massive thing or you don't. And even if you have a small portion of it, sometimes you get an accreditation for the massive thing, but it's really such a broad landscape, and we need to unpack it into smaller pieces so that we really know what we're getting when we're hiring a data scientist or an AI specialist.
Fantastic, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, I've got a, in case people aren't following the chat, I'm going to ask Professor Birgitta Andersen to actually just express her comment. Then I'll go to Chris Holmes, who's got his hand up, and then David Fearon to make his point. Birgitta.
Thank you. So my comment was related to these type of social capital networks, which Filomena talked about, how AI communities are emerging across businesses that can support each other and thereby kind of upskill or reskill each other. And that can be supported clearly by formal structures, as she did with EDF Energy, but they also work really well informally. And we found something similar in Big Innovation Center in the major project we were commissioned by BASE to work with OECD on, but we found that open source communities radically are more closer geographically and nationally than other IP communities related to patents and other. And that is because they're tied up in a social capital network of people working together, knowing together, supporting each other, and using the community as a center point. And maybe that's something we could see, we can support these type of more informal social capital communities via both business models or business practices, as Filomena talked about, or whether there could be some kind of encouragement for, I don't know how it should be, but encouragement for corporate policy to help to build up these communities. Maybe the catapult centers, or maybe other.
Thank you, Birgitta. I don't know if anyone wanted to comment back on that. If not, we will go to Chris Holmes. Chris, morning.
Thank you very much. Morning, Stephen. Morning, Tim. Morning, all. Thank you very much to all of the panelists for excellent, thought-provoking sessions, and a particular thanks to Ilana for getting up ridiculously early in the morning. I hope you've got some strong coffee going on there. A few thoughts, really. Do the panel feel that there is an imminent existential threat to the academy, to the higher education sector? And if so, how much is that existential threat understood and being addressed by that sector? I'm sort of partially reminded of a quote from Good Will Hunting, which I'll undoubtedly get partially wrong, but it went something like this when your man was chiding the undergrads at Harvard, saying, you know, you fools, you're paying $30,000 a year for something that you could have got for $1.50 at the public library. Well, in the AI space and across a lot of the new technology space, that public library is a space which is immediately available for so many people, as many of the panelists have alighted upon. So what's the point of the academy? I think there is one, but it'd be interesting to hear your views. On the sort of standards point, I think that was extremely well made. I wonder what the panelists' view are. To my mind, standards and regulations are the real cutting edge of enabling economic and social value generation rather than holding back or stymieing development on that front. And thirdly, Tim had this point, and worth echoing because it is so fundamental to all this. Be interested in any more thoughts or comments from the panel on the whole question of inclusion, because it is so utterly essential to all of this. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. Who would like to pick up on some of those points first? Just that's it, Purdy.
Yes. Well, I mean, I guess on the existential threat to higher education. Yes, I mean, we're not putting in the money that China and the US and even, you know, Germany are putting in. We have on almost all the stats, the US is so far ahead of everyone, and then China is sort of catching up, and then there's sort of 6 or 7 other countries, and we're in the forefront of those 6 or 7 in some areas and maybe less in others. But in terms of funding, we're just not putting in that amount of public sector spend at the moment. Now, we all have heard about the government's intentions to increase public sector spend from 10 billion in 2018 to 22 billion in 3 years' time. That's a huge amount of money. And if AI is one of the big strategic themes of this government, one would assume that an amount of that money will go towards AI. But it's, you know, where and how it is sort of unclear. And I think this AI strategy is there to inform that. Does HE, I mean, I think HE definitely knows this and is making the case constantly to government. But, you know, obviously government's got quite a lot on its plate at the moment. I think, you know, that's what's brilliant about this, what the APPG-AI is doing at the moment. I think there's a huge amount of both industry and advisory bodies are talking to the government about it, and hopefully this AI strategy will land funding that will kickstart, well, not kickstart, but give a huge momentum to AI research and allow us to continue to lead at the forefront of that pack. Maybe, I'm not sure that we'll have the scale to catch up with China and the US, but certainly to be at the forefront of the next group to continue that way.
Filomena, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. It was a really interesting point that's been made about the threat to academy. I wouldn't call it existential threat, but definitely it has been exacerbated by the COVID and lockdown situation when people could not attend physically the lessons and be physically on campus. And I think that there are novel and innovative learning approaches that have been being launched at the moment that have a different business model. It's more modular, so you don't need to take an entire degree, but you can only take a degree level module. And that could be cheaper and give the tools that are needed for particularly focused activities. I don't think that is existential, because the all-encompassing education of the higher education institution is you cannot substitute, but also is related to the standards point. How do you know, if you take a modular approach, how do you know at what level you need to take it? How do you know how much you need to learn? I know what is enough, what is it going to get you going? So just some thoughts.
Thank you. And then Ilana, and then Aidan, and then I'm going to go to David.
Just a quick point, because I think Filomena and Purdy said mostly everything, but there are, I would say, the educational landscape has a hard time adapting with the change of the pace of change in the AI space. So even just thinking about the software infrastructure that's needed in order to sustain production systems, that's still being determined by within the open source community. And so it's very hard for universities to keep pace with that and to design curriculum around something like that. So there are always going to be elements where there will be some type of divergent practices between what you can find online or through types of community-based training versus what you can in the educational landscape. But there's still very much a space for formal university-based education for the academy for the core foundational skills, especially around the specialist's path.
Thank you. And Aidan?
Yeah, just a very brief point. Chris mentioned an existential threat. Something like Coursera obviously is online educational software and tools. While those might cover the material, again, we're not seeing that there's less of a demand for a degree. If anything, there's more so. And it is this idea that Filomena touched on of a quality control and a check. You know, there's a difference between the top 10 in my class and the bottom 10 in my class, and you can see that clearly on their CVs. However, on a Coursera kind of situation, you don't have that so much. However, it would be great if universities would treat it as an essential threat and start to adapt and become much more responsive in the design and coordination of their programs to be able to do things much faster in response to this. But so far, not so much.
Thank you very much. Right, David, I know you've got a comment, but just a heads up, and then I'm going to go to Inma. David.
Thank you. Just very quickly, I just want to bring the issue a little bit more focus on the fundamentals, and I'm going to bring some of the comments that we are discussing at the GPAI, which is the G7 Global Partnership for Artificial Intelligence, and this is one of the topics that we're dealing with. There has to be a strategy to stop demonizing AI and using words such as, the ones that we've been mentioning, because the biggest gap right now in society is the population doesn't understand what it is, and the SMEs, not so much the large corporations, but the SMEs are not aware of its potentiality. So we have two different customers to serve: the people, to stop them being fearful and knowing how to use it and feel comfortable with it. And then the companies to be able to bring it into the digitization roadmap and really deal with complexities, uncertainties, and many other things that AI solves. And I think that in the academic world, at least from what we do at Imperial College, one of the things that have helped tremendously is hackathons and having a free-flowing strategy to allow different departments to collaborate with each other and let the students come up with ideas, and many of these has converted into hackathons where we have invited other universities. I think that in education we're letting the agenda be dictated by what are the areas that make people more passionate about researching, about applying themselves. And I want to thank Brigitte for the points that she made, which were incredibly valid as usual. But I think that those are the areas. Universities need to calibrate themselves to what is it that society needs from the people that come out of universities, and be more flexible in their programs. And the only way that we've done it at Imperial is by letting the students sometimes design some of those activities. So that was my contribution. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Very helpful. Unless anyone wants to comment on that, but I think the point was well made. I will go to David Fearon. David.
Thank you for allowing me to speak this morning, and thank you for allowing me to attend the panel. My point really picks up on Filomena's, Professor Anderson's, Imna, Ilana. It's about the democratization of knowledge. Allow me to go off at a tangent. If we want to vaccinate a nation, then we've proven we can do it quickly. It's very clear we have a huge worry at the moment about the digital skills across the nation. AI is a complicated subject, but it's not all complicated. We have capability now that can be given in the form of a vaccine to businesses who would benefit. Small businesses across the UK make up a large percentage of our economy. So my point is, as a benefit of something like the Young Enterprise Scheme, which was a business mentoring program we ran in the UK for many years in schools and colleges, which me as a student has benefited from, my teachers also benefit from, because it delivered the how-to of business. And as you see now, there are many budding business owners who run their own business because they have the knowledge, skills, and confidence to do so. We can do the same with AI. We can take the mystery out of AI and use that existing platform, that existing infrastructure to deliver this vaccine of AI. It would take the fear out of AI and the mystery. It would tell people how they can use the knowledge to solve the problems and enhance their own profit line, enhance their own knowledge. So I think the infrastructure already exists. I think we can talk about this all day long. I think it's important to control the ethics and the dangerous elements of what AI can deliver. That's really important. But if we know there are problems that need solving now, and the vaccine creation process has proven that in the medical research organizations, then let's help business undo the mystery. Let's give them the knowledge. Let's do that at grassroots level in the schools, using the Young Enterprise Scheme if we need to, and activate the champions who already have the knowledge. Now, at the moment, I feel through marketing that the knowledge is being held in universities. And we're better than that. As a country, we are better at distributing knowledge and vaccines, and we can do that now, in all honesty. And there's my plea, because I've seen it work, and there's my passion for it. I know nothing about AI, but I do know how to solve problems across the UK as an ex-member of the armed forces, and we've done it well and done it quickly. So over to those who know how.
David, thank you for that. That was a really useful and passionate point. I've said, and we've said in this group many times, that we're not convinced that there is the right connection between our education system and the opportunities that exist within business, and rebuilding that link, I think, is vital in helping everyone understand the world as it is now, rather than the world it might have been only a few years ago. So thank you for that. Ilana, I think you wanted to make a point.
Just very briefly, I think I agree democratization is hugely valuable, and there's a lot of potential to upskill a broad swath of society so that we can identify use cases. I do just want to go back to the practicality of building deployable systems. There's a big gap between creating experimental small, toy examples for AI, for artificial intelligence, and building something that is production grade that actually can serve business decisions. In my experience, that's a significant gap. I think we did a survey last year. It said only 6% of organizations that are investing in AI actually have scaled and deploy AI systems. So I do think that there is this mass democratization effort we should do, but we can't lose sight of what it means to actually create something that is a usable solution at the end of the day for businesses.
Thank you. And I think, Purdy, you've also indicated.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to pick up on David's point. Absolutely. I mean, I think I mentioned the BBC Microbit program and the digital curriculums, but absolutely, that Young Enterprise is a fantastic organization that could be brought into this. And I think we need to get all of these systems working and look at who's doing it really well. Finland, as I said, is doing it really, really well. But it is about supporting the teachers and going into, I mean, we're doing stuff with numeracy skills at National Numeracy, and there's a case to be made for maybe numeracy, literacy and digital skills going in and working with all the teacher training academies and having a sort of core certification just to get the fear away from of all three of those skill sets.
Excellent, thank you. Aidan, I think,
Yeah, I'll just be very brief, but I think, you know, you have to take into consideration when talking about democratizing this to, you know, say all school children in the UK, you know, you have to start with the teachers and you have to upskill them first as well and make it a core part of their training as well, you know, and that's no easy thing. And it might be one to, you know, lower the bar for what you're expecting to, say, basic digital literacy as a more achievable goal, as, you know, something more ambitious can be quite daunting and can put people off, and generally is this kind of this fear of the complexity of something, which is a great barrier to learning. So maybe if you're going for a broad approach, then a lower bar for kind of level might be appropriate.
Thank you for that. Tim, I think we've reached almost full time. Tim, I don't know if you want to just do a quick 30-second summary, and then I will wrap things up.
That's what you call a hospital pass, I think, Stephen.
I did try and message you, Tim.
But I do think that this unpacking today, in terms of the different levels of skill, you know, this isn't a kind of one size fits all. And I also think that the democratization point is a very strong one as well. You know, as Inma says, you know, we got to approach this in a much more kind of open way, really. And not treat it as a sort of thing to be fearful of. So I think that is, you know, that's a good point to take with us when we respond to the, you know, the National AI Strategy consultation. But, you know, this is, I think, one of the most difficult areas because it needs at every level of education, at every level of government, at every level in terms of SME and big corporates, it needs a kind of common effort. And I think that's the difficulty of this, is to get a kind of idea of what we should all be doing. Now, I think it's probably going to be too much to ask the National AI Strategy to be absolutely crystal clear on this. So I suspect we're going to all continue to have to keep working on this in our own different ways. But I think we should be extremely grateful for each of our speakers in their own very different ways. I mean, I thought what was so interesting is the variety of input. And we'll try and reflect that when we summarize our input into the strategy.
Thank you, Tim. That was great. And apologies, Ben, I've only just seen your hand up and we have to draw things to a close. But if you want to drop us an email with your point or whatever, we'll take that on board. Can I too thank all of our speakers for their contributions. As Tim said, a good range and diverse range of points, which I know will have been captured and will help us in our deliberations as we try and pull together some report on these discussions. So thank you again to all my speakers, to all those of you who attended and the questioners, to the Big Innovation Centre for all their work in pulling this together, and of course to all our sponsors, without whom we wouldn't have the funding to be able to do this. So I'm incredibly grateful to you all. I hope you've enjoyed this session as much as I have, and I will see you all again at the next one. Cheerio, have a great day.
Thank you, bye-bye.